Great. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in. We're excited for today's discussion. As uh, as we get started, I do want to encourage everyone to be active in today's discussion. As Vonnie indicated, we're going to be on mute, but through the chat boxes, you can chime in with questions or comments, and that will be a great way for me to direct comments and situations in the materials that will be most relevant for everyone chimed in. Now, let's do the setup for today's conversation, realizing the benefits of an organization redesign. Last time we did a webinar, we talked about getting a redesign kicked off and how to successfully do that. And I think we had a really nice set of learnings and insights from that webinar. This particular webinar kind of takes us down the path a bit where we've done a lot of the design work, and now we're trying to say, can we actually realize the benefits that we hope to get? And so I'm excited to jump into this. Now, some of you may be familiar with me and with AlignOrg Solutions. We're a niche consulting firm that really specializes in helping organizations do several things: clarify their strategy, assess their organization's capabilities to deliver on that strategy, of course, design their organizations, and then effectively implement the change that needs to happen. When we do this work, most of our time is spent actually in the trenches with clients doing projects and helping them do that. And that's, for us, some of the most rewarding work that we do. But on the other hand, we do get the chance from time to time in a session like this, and even in some of our dedicated training workshops, to teach people how to do the kind of consulting work that we do, because we believe that if there's capability inside of companies, then the conversations and the effectiveness of organizations increase considerably. And so that's a large part of what we do. Now, in today's conversation, I may reference some different organizations, not necessarily all of these here on this page, but that, whether we're reading in the newspaper or whether there are organizations that you've had some personal contact with, whether it's your own organization or others, I just find that stories are a great way for us to learn and internalize different principles around organization design and ultimately the implementation of successful designs. So I like to reference those as a way for us to be able to connect what might feel like academic or theoretical ideas to something that someone's actually done and applied. So let's talk a little bit about what we want to accomplish today. I've sort of got four objectives that I think I want to get through. The first is, how do executives play a role in making sure that an organization redesign is implemented successfully? So talking a bit about their role. The second is, how do HR practitioners or other possible partners contribute with business leaders in helping to drive the success of an organization transformation? Because often it's not just a singular effort of one person or two people, but really it's a partnership that really drives the most effective transformative change. The third thing we want to talk a little bit about is how do we make sure that people throughout the organization at a tactical level are involved and engaged so that their behaviors and ultimately their performance measurably change. And then finally, we want to talk about some of the techniques that help ensure acceptance and adoption of the proposed organizational changes, so that when all the investment that was made, time and money and energy and all those things that go into figuring out how to change an organization, that we don't lose that we actually realize some of the benefits. So that's kind of the areas that we want to get to and cover today. Now, I kind of alluded to this as I reviewed the principles or the objectives for today's discussion. But in our book, Mastering the Cube, we introduced sort of a duo, a powerful duo. One is what we sort of lovingly call the Chief Alignment Officer. The other is a change partner. And the idea is that any leader in an organization at the highest levels at the enterprise or down through the ranks should consider themselves or see themselves as alignment leaders. Now, we're going to talk about what that entails, but as a leader sees themselves that way, among all the different roles that they play, they start to take on this responsibility and stewardship to attend to the health and effectiveness of their organization. Now, again, they don't do that in isolation. They have other partners who work with them, and we lovingly call them change partners, people who can work with an alignment leader, a business leader, and help them chart the path and facilitate the discussions and possibly provide the tools and frameworks that will help ensure that an organization gets aligned properly. And the basic premise of our book was that organizations are sort of like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube. It's a multi-dimensional problem, just like the Rubik's Cube is. I don't get credit on the Rubik's Cube if I solve just the red side. I have to solve all 6 sides. And, I usually personally have to turn to my teenage son to have him do that. But nonetheless, if you can solve the complexity of an organization alignment problem, now you've put your organization in a position where it can really drive some significant change and performance. And so a change partner with an alignment leader who have a vision for how to manipulate their organization to drive their strategic differentiation, that creates a really powerful force for improvement. Now, let's talk a little bit more about sort of these alter egos. The alignment leader essentially has some key characteristics that make them successful. One of them is, and we reviewed this last month, so I'm going to go pretty fast here for those that are tuning in again this month. The alignment leader is really good at making choices and trade-offs. There's way too many things to do in most organizations, and if I polled everyone on today's webinar, you'd probably say, yeah, we're overloaded. Our plates are full and things are spilling off of them. Well, good alignment leaders recognize that, and they start to make trade-offs, and they start to say to the organization themselves and their teams and their organizations, here's what's most important. Here's where our energy and resources need to be spent. The second thing that they do, of course, and not surprisingly, given that we're calling them alignment leaders, is they make sure the organization is aligned. They look at the different components of the organizational cube, the work of the organization, the structure, the metrics, the talent, the culture, and they pull all these pieces together and they say, are these things working in a cohesive and an effective way to drive results? The third thing that they do is they then make sure that the change that they've articulated and architected is being driven. This is the area of alignment leadership today that we're going to probably explore the most, is how they drive change. And then the last thing they do is they don't hold this responsibility of being an alignment leader to themselves. They teach others. They teach leaders throughout the organization and throughout the ranks what it means to be an alignment leader, so that they're not the only ones trying to clean up the overloaded plates of everybody, but leaders throughout the organization recognize that tension and are making trade-offs. And everybody through the organization is making sure that the decisions they're making are in alignment with the strategic objectives and so on. Now, on the change partner side, they're bringing a slightly different set of characteristics to the table. One of them is a diagnostic characteristic, one that sort of asks questions and assesses, is the organization doing and capable of doing what it needs to do? And how can the change partner work with the alignment leader to pull that off? They certainly bring tools and processes for making and affecting organizational changes. They should be a good thought partner, someone that the alignment leader can trust, talk to openly, and share ideas and thoughts and sort of brainstorm different ways that things could happen and move forward. And lastly, they have some experience, or if they don't, they gain it over time so that they can kind of mark the path for the leader and say, here's what's going to come next, or here's something you need to be thinking about. And what we find, of course, is the change partner plays their role effectively, they bring the alignment leader along, and when the alignment leader plays their role effectively, the change partner really becomes a nice additive and amplifying effect for the alignment leader to be even more effective with the tools and the right questions and the additional thought partnership that a change partner brings. Now, today we're going to specifically dive into that issue of how does an alignment leader drive change, because At the end of the day, the only reason we do an organization redesign is to implement it successfully and change our business results. And as we stood back and looked at this and said, well, what is it that really makes the difference between organization redesigns that work and ones that don't work? And we broke it down and said there are sort of 5 characteristics. We called these the 5 steps of implementing a successful organization redesign. I'll quickly review them here and then we'll dive into each one. The first is we build a journey management plan. Now, journey management might be a little bit of a different term. Some who've chimed in on these webinars before might have heard me talk about those. But a journey management plan is a different way of talking about change management. Change management has a tendency to sort of narrow into just the stakeholders' response or maybe into the communications aspects of a change. But journey management for me is a more holistic concept that talks to the fact that to really change an organization, it's a journey. It takes a lot of different aspects and components. Some of them are human resources in nature. Some of them are IT in nature. Some of them might be work process in nature. Some of them might be change and communications in nature. Some might be project management in nature. All those components are essential to affecting the performance of the organization. So we view all of that as being something that's part of the journey, and we'd like to see a plan that acknowledges all of that. The second thing we like to look at is let's make sure we're not skimping on or forgetting to put in place a robust change structure. We're not looking to create hierarchy here, but we're looking to have accountability and dedicated resources that can actually pull things off. Thirdly, as leaders, we want to make sure that we're staying visible, engaged, and consistent in our messaging. The last thing the organization needs to hear is a big hoopla and announcement about something and then never hear about it again, or to hear something completely different a few days or weeks later. Another leadership trait is that we want to see or insist upon a behavior change. We'll talk about why behavior change is so important in these kinds of efforts. And then finally, we want to see an update on progress and performance. So these are the 5 steps that we found that really drive successful implementation of organization redesigns.